you've done stunts in like movies and stuff.
Yep.
So how did you get into stunts in like such big roles in movies? Or like,
It started, I mean, for me, it kind of all really hit off really well, like with the X Games. Like I had competed in that for years, and then in skydiving, just had competed for years as like a multidiscipline athlete. So skydiving has different acrobatic disciplines, like sky surfing, freestyle,
yeah,
free fly, something called VFS, and these different disciplines. And you know, I basically competed in all of those and medaled in those, and then trained someone and filmed them, the different people, to try and get medals in those, and got medals in those for filming them. And then kind of just over the years, was sort of like would be considered like an expert, or a pretty small amount of people in the world could really sky surf with any proficiency and all of that stuff. So when that was required for a TV show or a movie or something like that, I would kind of end up getting to get picked for that stuff, just because the list was pretty small.
yeah,
And then just, you know, over the years, you know, from those opportunities, working with different people, and kind of just knowing different people at different times. And then a really good friend of mine over the years that I had known through skydiving had become a pretty influential coordinator over the years. His name was Tim Rigby. And he had kind of offered to he's like, hey man, you should go check out this audition. You'd be great for it, or whatever. And he really encouraged me to go. And I went for this Hawaii 5-0 audition, and I got it, and they ended up turning it into like not a bunch of times, but a recurring
yeah.
character, and they let me have some lines and some stuff like that. So it was like they were really amazing. It turned into like a really kind, you know, friend of the show, and they had given me a couple of great things, and they had reused the stunt that I did for a long time. But working on that, I had met a couple of people, and I don't know if this is the long version for you,
No, it's
but
all good.
but he ended up, I had done a really good job, and I'd met some people on that show. And I'm kind of nerdy. My dog's going crazy. I
It's all
apologize.
good.
Enough, come. But I had kind of gotten to this point where I'm a super disciplined person. So it was like I'm like waking up at like 5:30 in the morning and like stretching and working out and doing those things. So when I was working on the shows, I was still kind of doing that. And I think that, you know, those people were like, okay, he's, you know, at least, you know, disciplined, or it's at least how it strayed from just doing sky surfing.
Yeah.
It's to kind of getting to act and do some stunts, you know, and as a, you know, as a focus or whatnot.
Is there a favorite one that you like, a favorite movie that you've?
Man, yeah. I'll tell you, I shock myself. I'm shocked at what a dork I am. Like I'm thrilled by it. Like every single time, like you know, anytime I've worked, like most of these people that like I've worked with, like I go to the movies. Like I'm one of those people. Like that's like my jam. I love it. So it's
Yeah.
like for me, it's really exciting. Anytime I've worked with them, it's like that's amazing. Like that's really cool. And it's a really cool peek behind the curtain. So, and I'm just saying that they're all really thrilling for me. So I've been really stoked on all of them. There's something really special about each of those opportunities that really rings out for me. But Iron Man 3, my wife and my whole Red Bull team ended up getting to be like profiled for, you know, had like a specialty stunt sequence in it that was like long and large. And you know, it was like a 3-month run, and it was really exciting. And that would probably be the one that was like the most epic, you know,
Yeah.
crazy thing. Um, but on the personal side of it, you know, I've gotten to do a bunch of movies like Hangover 3 we basically got to, from a flying point of view, got to just like completely fly all over Las Vegas, like around the Eiffel Tower, landed on the roof of the Planet
That's cool.
Hollywood. We got buzzed the Bellagio Tower has the Bellagio Hotel has this huge lake with these fountains that
Oh,
shoot up
yeah.
about 200 feet. And me and my teammate basically flew at about 200 feet and got cannoned with these misters and then landed in the street. And so that was pretty just epic
That's awesome.
experience. Yeah, they're all spoily,
That
no
sounds
shortage of
cool.
it.
Um, do you ever get scared at all? Like when you actually that leads to one of my questions.
Okay. Do you want me to answer that one or your lead question?
I, do you when do you ever get scared? So do you have fear when you do your stunts or skydive, and how do you use it as your strength? Like how do you change it into a
Yeah, it's really, it's a tough question. It's interesting. Like when I listen to your perspective, and I think everybody uses things for fuel differently.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And that conversion process of fear to fuel, kind of, whether it's conscious or not, I think happens for people at different points along that like linear activity, if that makes
yeah,
sense. Like for me, around the flying, I really don't have the same level of fear, because I have sort of a different concept of it. Like in my mind, and this does answer your question, it is both. Like for me, breath is a huge thing for me, using my breath to really connect my mind and my body, and to control the pace of the fight or the scene, is like an essential part of my process. I do an intense amount of visualization before, where I'm really visualizing for peak performance, where one of my friend jokes with me, where it's like I will like visualize a stunt or a jump even maybe 100 times before I even get to go do it. But then like by the time I'm doing it, it looks like I've done it 100 times, and it makes a huge difference. By the time I'm walking up to the edge of whatever, and I fill in the blank,
yeah,
it's not the first time. It's not the first time in my consciousness for it. And I'm not walking up to the edge and then going, okay, I'm gonna start my breath. And like it's like no, it's like way early. Like I've walked that course perfect
yeah,
in my mind easily 100 times, and I'm setting my breath like 5 minutes from before that thing. I'm already walking up with the breath that I'm going to be flying with. And I think of fear personally as this like I think a lot of times we, especially in these kinds of things, we get this idea where that fear is a premonition, or it's my body warning me, you know what I
yeah,
mean, of this doom and all these things. And I always like, when I have like students or friends, I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I'm like, are you like, are you ever good at guessing the future at anything? And they're like, no. And I'm like, so what makes you think that all of a sudden this is what this is? Like
yeah,
it's like, you're not a prognostic. It's like at all. This is it's like misinterpreting in my mind thirst for hunger. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
lots of times people will be really dehydrated and thirsty, but
yeah,
they're like they interpret it as hungry, and they go to grab food rather than drinking water, which is what, you
yeah,
know what I mean? They're just misinterpreting what the body is telling them. And those feelings and all of those things, I think, are things that come up from the unknown, and from and some reinforcement that we're actually telling the future for this first moment in our lives. We're just so triggered and intense a moment that somehow it's like, I'm seeing the future and it is doom. You know?
Yeah.
And I've kind of prepped myself in a way that when I'm walking to that moment, I'm not hitting that wall. I'm not having that experience. So it's hard for me to answer your question in your way. But I will tell you, you know, like I have been like an extreme person in stunting for my entire life, you know, like my entire life. With I've forgotten more adventures than is even fair for a person to have in a lifetime, right? Like I feel blessed by that experience run and everything. And I had a different, I didn't have that fear thing, but I experienced that once all of a sudden I had kids. Like in a way that like I never would have imagined. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that was really probably the first time that like I ever like would be like, oh, fear. It's not like a fake thing that's just sent to my subconscious to make me be less cool, but like a thing like, holy crap, right? Like I've been a motorcycle guy my whole life. Like retarded. I go too fast. I've lost my license on it like multiple times. Like I have no self-control. I love them. They're part of my entire life, like from before I could skydive. I always had like these daydreams of like me and my sons like on a road trip, you know, on our bikes, just enjoying that thing together, you know. And I remember, and my, you know, my eldest son was kind of like, yeah, cool bikes, you know, I dig it, whatever, but you know, whatever. I remember my youngest son when he was like, you know, 4, you know, like not really talking too much or anything, but he like walked by the garage and like just for the first time really saw my sport bike, and he just like looked at it and was like, I saw it just like capture him, you know, and like he just like touched it and like couldn't express anything, but just like touched it and like felt this thing and then gave me this goddamn look, like looked at me like, oh, like he got it in this thing. And I was just like instantly terrified in a way that I never imagined. Like I didn't think I would have that reaction, but I was totally just like, I was like, maybe I'm gonna cover this bike, you know. And that was probably the first time, and it wasn't like doing anything, you know, exotic or something. It was just probably this thing that everybody deals with, you know. And I told myself the same thing. I wasn't telling the future. It was just intense.
Yeah. Do they ride bikes now, or they?
He's still, well, he's 6, you know, so he's
Okay.
but he has a electric bike. If they make a bike that is a buddy of mine, Robbie Madison. He's a Red Bull teammate, amazing person, but motorcycle guy is his forte. But he kind of connected us with this thing called Stacy Ride, and they're basically like these little electric dirt bikes that are amazing.
That's it.
And he rips around on those. Yeah, he crushes it. They're spoiled. I mean, I didn't have anything like that when I was that age, but so good luck, enjoy.
That was a better way to answer my question. Yeah. Okay. That's sort of. Thank you for that question. Oh no, I've stuffed up for some reason, whenever I do these interviews, my phone stuffs up with the questions. What first set off your career?
I don't know, like which one. I'll be honest. I've been like a pretty like hyper driven person like my whole life. I think I've been like spinning plates, trying to spin as many plates as I can. So I feel blessed. I've had kind of a pretty multifaceted run. But when I was young, I wanted to be an actor. I went to a acting conservatory where we studied like, you know, acting, singing, and dancing, modern jazz and ballet, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 kind of thing for 2 years, like a university. I graduated high school early and got accepted into that place, and then was doing a lot of theater and commercials and, you know, little independent films and things like that. And I it was really my passion. It was really what I wanted to do, and I grew up in New York City. It was in a good spot for it and everything. And I was racing bikes, motorcycles, kind of not like on a track, but just like I'm sure I'm fine now. A long time, but like illegal racing, just racing around like an idiot, you know. And the guy, I was young, and the guy that I bought my bikes from was this old school jumper that had all these pictures of skydiving on the back of the wall. And I was like, they just looked so amazing and compelling and just mind blowing, you know? And I was like, man, how many of these bikes do I got to buy before you take me skydiving? And he's like, you 18 yet? Because I was like, you know, a young turd or whatever. And I was like, I just turned 18. And he's like, let's go, you know. And I went, I did a tandem skydive, and I mean, I like instantly, I was not like one of these like, oh, no fear. Like I was just, it was like really quieting. It was like I did this jump, and it was like the most peaceful, connective thing that I had ever experienced. And it wasn't anything that I anticipated at all. Like it was like none of the feelings of that day were anything I anticipated, but it was like, I remember jumping out and just going, oh my God, this is where I was supposed to be. Like and like I didn't say anything, which is rare for me. Like, you see, I'm a chatty dude. You know, I landed silenced, you know, and I was just like I felt like connected to life and to just everything. Like it was like an epiphany of sorts for me. And I was like, I don't know what, but this was for me. And I felt so blessed to have that, you know. Like I think about that, like for my kids, it's like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, I don't care what they do as long as they're like passionate about it and they have it, because that'll just take you through so much of the inherent ups and downs of life, you know. And but it was a real epiphany, and I started jumping, and then very early, I think I had like, you know, very few jumps, had about 50 jumps. I saw something like I saw some sky surfing thing, and I was like, is that real? Like it didn't seem like it, like blew my mind. I didn't even understand it. And they're like, oh yeah, you know, there's a few people doing it. And I was like, that's me. I don't know what, again, like this crazy thank you universe for like bunking me in the head. Like, oh wow, okay, great. It's like the idea that I was able to, it's weird enough to be good at something as random as sky surfing and obscure, you know what I mean? I feel so blessed that I was able to find it, you know, let alone at a young age. But I basically called the one guy on the West Coast that would teach it, and I was like, hey, yeah, I want to come out and learn how to sky surf. And he's like, okay, you got to have 500 jumps, and I had like 80 at the time, and I was like, yeah, I got 580 jumps. And he's like, okay, and you got to be a free flyer. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like the free fly guy on the drop zone. And I was like, what's free flying? You know, like I didn't know, you know. And he's like, okay, you know, come on. I booked a flight. I went out to him, and I ended up just really connecting with it. Just, it was like when you can, when the tuning fork hits for you and pitches, you hear it. It's just like, boom, and there's just like that flow, that path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Like, oh, and he was like, oh yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I just did all these like crazy, to them they were just like, what are you doing? I'm like, I was doing helicopters and doing all this stuff. It's like, is that hard? I'm like, yeah. You know, I'm 18 and I found something I love. And when I left him and I was flying home, Jerry was the owner of the Surflight board that I fly and all this stuff. he basically called the owner of my drop zone. He's like, hey, I don't know if you're sponsoring anyone, but that Sean MacCormac guy, he's a jumper at your drop zone. You need to sponsor him. There's like X Games, there's things happening. Like he's like you haven't, this is the guy. And they're like, Sean MacCormac, like, who's that joker? And they're like, you're a criminal. You're teaching people sky surfing with 50 jumps. That guy's a joker. Like, what are you doing? You know? And then that guy, Jerry, ended up connecting me with this, like the gold medalist at the time, who just basically mentored me. And like, I had all these people that were just like super, it's kind of a different time in a weird way where, the idea of like a mentor and an apprentice or whatever that relationship is, you know what I mean? That dynamic, really was more, it was more prevalent, you know what I mean? Like it was something like, oh man, you're going to train your ass off and people are going to be dying all around you, and you're going to train your ass off for years for you to be amazing at this super rare thing. And we know that no one in the world even cares, but these flying aviator people just thought it was such like a random amazing thing that they were just like, you know what, do it, and I just ended up getting like picked up by these like amazing just collectors of, I don't know, uniqueness, I don't know. But so that guy ended up really kind of connecting me with this thing with the X Games, and ended up competing with that, and it went really well. And I remember going to my manager in New York City at this one point, and I was a dork, but I remember sitting across from her at this point. I'm like 19 or whatever, and I'm like, listen, I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna start traveling with the X Games. I'm a sky surfer. She's like, the X Games? This is like the first few years of the X Games. She's like,
Yeah.
Nobody knew what that was. I'm like, what the hell is the sky surfing X Games? These are two things that I know nothing about. It sounds retarded. And she's like, what are you doing? Like you're close to this moment in acting. You've worked really hard. Like we've worked really hard to get you this place. You're about to start doing these things. Like, don't leave now. This is the wrong time to leave. And I was like, with all the hubris of a 19-year-old that I could muster, I imagine, I like looked at her and I was like, I'd rather be the guy that climbed the mountain than the guy that pretended to climb the mountain. And she's like, you're an idiot. And I was like, I'm doing it, and I like, marched, I hopped in my, got this motor home and me and my Dobie basically like hit the X Games trail, and I started competing, and it just like set off a lifelong passion with a zero regret about, I felt really blessed, like I said, to have
Are you
connected
still
with it.
mentored by the same person, or like do you still
I do not. Well, Jerry, who was the guy that made the boards, he ended up dying about 5 years into 3 or maybe 4 years into my sky surfing career. He ended up so that did not work out. And then the other gentleman at that time had really helped me out a bunch. I didn't really care for throughout. I feel really blessed, but people kind of have, left and gone on their own, retired, and kind of, they're fairly recluse. Sky surfing's a fairly solo sport. You're used to spending a lot of time alone. So I think that's probably their preferred intention. But I felt really, skydiving is a really intense thing, and it's sort of, you see these little very tight circles, but if you somehow get inside of them, it's like you're fairly well protected and guided, as it were.
It sounds like it's I've been watching like the video of you when I think there was a storm, and it was when you were flying. Yeah, it just, I don't know why that made me want to skydive, because I haven't done yet, but I want to.
Yes.
I think it's the fear, but I feel like once you know that thing, like feeling once you do it once, it's like you want to do it over and over and over. I think
Yeah,
that's what it's.
I know it well.
Yeah.
That's what spawned that video. When I that video had come about from that stunt. It was when I guess in like 97 or something like that. I was living in Florida near that drop zone where we filmed that, and I was training for an X Games, and I had this like eccentric, millionaire at the time that was just like made this pilot that just said fly him, and he would just like fly planes for me all day by myself, like an empty just super grand caravan thing. And he would basically make the pilot just fly me all day long in Florida, training for this X Games by myself. And this place was right on the edge of this lake, and it would get these, I don't know if you've spent any time in, maybe not, but in Florida, it's like this place would get every afternoon, like clockwork, you'd get these enormous cumulus clouds and storms like every afternoon. It's like a lightning capital of of places. It's a lot of lightning there.
Yeah.
And and I, basically I was being flown by this guy, this like old Vietnam pilot, who was like everything that you imagine, like salty, boozy, angry, nightmarish guy, right? And I remember he would be flying me. He was just like such a dick. And it was like there was no getting him out of his own ass. And I was just like, he was just talking shit all the time. And I was just like, all right, I tell you what, can you fly this bucket of bolts? Or is this like the only thing you know how to run? And he's like, oh, and I was like, okay, can you chase me for a little bit? And he's like, oh yeah, I can chase you. I was like, all right, let's do this, old man. And I have him fly towards the edge of this huge cloud, and I jump out and I just start flying around this cloud, and I fly into it and I fly out and I go upside down and I just put my hands on the edge of it and fly around it. And then I fly away from it like as fat, like at like 100 and something. And, I dump and I beat the pilot down to the ground, and he lands with the first smile I had ever seen on this old brute's face, right? And he was just like, that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Whatever you need, I will do. And I was just like, what? And he just like suddenly was like the guy. Like all of a sudden, he was like my like guy, like this key to this thing that I had never imagined, And or it's just the two of us by ourselves, and we just started pushing it, where he would suddenly started flying me over these huge storms and basically drop me over the top of it, and there'd be like 10,000 feet, and I'd be in it just like barely able to see and spinning and doing my tricks, which are pretty challenging in there because you lose your orientation. It's really turbulent and wild, and like somewhere in the distance of this cloud, lightning would be going off, and the whole cloud would just illuminate, like, and you'd be like on the outside of it, and you're just like, and it was just this crazy thing, and it was something that I did for like an entire summer. Like I have more wild things of this, like landing off and crazy from this summer of adventure. And it was like I was telling this story to this FM, like this Red Bull rep from the East Coast, and they were like, can we do that again? Can we film that? And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And they ended up like making it happen, but it took like a year. But by the time it happened, it was like the power of like everyone wanting to participate on something crazy. It was like we had like the Orlando Tower using their radar to call our pilot saying, we see more lightning going off on the storm to your east, and they're like, Mah! It was like we're being vectored through like this, federal agency to lightning. Like it was just a cool, I don't know, moment.
Was there any other career you wanted to pursue other than what you're doing now? Or was that acting? Or is that like you?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I think about like when I was a kid, and my parents were like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or any of those things. So I was like, and, I feel like something that they used to ask me, which I really appreciated, was, like at that time, whatever phase of my life, like, hey, what do you want to be right now? Like if we kick you out of the house and you got to go like be, what do you want to be right now to survive? You know what I mean? Like kid in the wild, two knives up. What are you gonna do? And I was like, oh, it's obvious. I want to be like a astronaut, race car driver, or actor, and then it like spawned to this thing. And in the end, I have like this weirdo, funny version of it. You know what I mean? It's like it's not space, but I play around in the sky, and I basically get to race around, and I kind of make my own movies and get to play in this movie space, which I just love to participate in. And flying has been such a art, love, passion thing for me, that getting to kind of use that and paint that in films kind of feels so rewarding. Like even if it's like when I'm just doing a couple of lines, like if I'm just acting and I'm getting to a couple of lines or a cool fight scene where I'm really using my acting skills, but I'm also kind of using this other art thing, and I'm getting to show it and use that. It really thrills me in a different way, even more than when I'm just acting, and which I also really enjoy. Like I do a lot of like theater still, and other stuff. So it's a passion for me. But skydiving and this other things, obviously, like I've got over 22,000 jumps. I've been sponsored even just with Red Bull for over 10 years of just adventure.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, so this is what I like to do. And now I'm with with social media and with the other things that I do. It's like I've been really like editing and playing with the music and connecting all of my friends that are in that media space and like the different influencers. And
yeah. I've realized because you've done the thing with Amar, and I also
yeah,
saw this. You did this thing with Eric. He,
yeah.
yeah,
I did, yeah.
yeah. I've watched him since he like first started, and it's
Oh,
cool
how
what he's
funny.
done. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I don't
We've
know.
got I feel lucky. We've had like a like the LA squad of influencers that we've put through maybe a dozen of them, like a bunch of them through their AFF or worked with them in a bunch of different other capacities and stuff like that. So it's been fun even just seeing them all, from like Jacob Wrigley to obviously Yes Theory to Max, to a bunch of wonderful ladies. There's been a ton of people that have been coming out, and it's like we feel there's like like probably one of the most, in my mind, like digitally influential like skydiving clubs. Like there's like out of LA, there's like a pod, like you see like these like carpools of people coming up where you're just like, holy crap, look at all these people, like, which this plane makes it. It was just fun. It's beautiful. It's cool to see everyone kind of getting into it and seeing it and seeing that perspective, and kind of falling in love with it. It's been amazing to see.
Yeah, it's awesome. Do you skydive like every day, or like is it every?
It kind of changes. It changes a bunch for me. I usually don't jump that much on the weekends unless there's like something specific going on. Honestly, it changes. Like the last year and a half with quarantine, COVID, and everything was really different. Typically, my team and I would be on the road individually or together, but like I would be on the road just over 200 days a year. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of travel. And so like on those kinds of things, I'm actually jumping less. I'm kind of doing more eccentric or, wild one-off kind of crazy stunts. But it takes like 2 days of travel, 2 days of travel back, the setup, the whole
Yeah,
thing. It's usually there for like one jump of, maximum super laser focus, and then you're done. Rather than like when I was living on the drop zone, and like when I was training back in the day, I was competing on 3 teams. at the same time every year. So I would basically have to train with each of these three teams as much as any one person would train with their one team in the year, you know? So I was doing almost 2,000 jumps a year, which is just insane. It's just waking. I lived in the parking lot of the place, and I woke up and I, you know, flew all day and flew in a wind tunnel at night. You know, I was like competing. I was training sky surfing, free flying, freestyle, like every day. Like, it's not like, and in that sense, that's like me at my most current, my most, you know, optimal, whatever. But that's, but like obviously when I'm in a 200 travel day year, it's just set up super different. I'm doing, instead of 2,000 jumps, I'm probably on those years doing like 500, but they're crazy. And in those situations, I'm jumping, you know, once or for like a cluster every 10 days. But like when I'm home, because I was able to fortunately fly a fair amount during this whole experience, because my airport still flew me, stuff like that, and I was able to do a bunch of like private stuff. So I jumped probably a lot more last year than I almost normally do. So I was like, COVID's not in the sky, yay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of how the jumping goes. But I'm jumping every week. I'm usually not that much on the weekends, and it's kind of at this phase of my life, it's like integrated with my family and, you know, my other responsibilities.
My second question was, how's COVID affected you? But you sort of like answered that. Or
yeah, I mean, it was, you know what, it was definitely, it was huge though. It's definitely different being shifted from being on the road almost primarily to being at home, homeschooling. We've got like 3 different, you know, distinctly different ages. It was all just obviously the same crazy transition for everybody, you know, like it was definitely, you know, finding a new way to work and a new way to do those things. And that was kind of rewarding in its own way. And I'm a big family guy, so it felt like a blessing to be able to just hunker down with the family and still kind of get to, it felt like a crazy blessing to really be able to fly. I think I would have gone, I mean, I can't even imagine. I think I would have gone ape shit if I had been, you know, stuck and not like if it had been like a change where I was like suddenly not traveling at all and not filming anything at all, and then on top of it I couldn't fly at all, then I like I love my setup and my family and all those things, but I probably wouldn't have been as, you know, jovial about it.
yeah,
I would have been positive but not jovial, you know, and I felt really positive. I was still, and I got to work on kind of the more the storytelling and the filmmaking part of my craft, right? So it's like, I'm, you know, making more of these like short videos and these connected things just on my own, and just sort of like highlighting the different disciplines of skydiving and kind of showing some of those things that a lot of new people just haven't seen, and can kind of, it's been a real amazing for me how many people have reached out to me, you know, through social media and stuff like that, just newly inspired from, you know, random places. And, you know, one of the most amazing thing, like social media in so many ways gets like such a bad rap, you know?
yeah,
And to me, it's been like, it's like the internet, right? Like you could use the internet. You have like the entirety of humanity's wisdom and information in the palm of your hand, right?
yeah,
So you can learn anything. Obviously, it's up to the questions you're asking and what you're using it for. And most people use it for fairly silly things relative to asking it the wisdom. But, you know, I feel like social media, one of the coolest things has been its connectiveness, like just randomly, you know, like there was like a musician, I like loved his song off of TikTok, and I like made a video using his song, connected with him, he came out, did a tandem, like buds, like super inspired. Awesome. Like it's just this connective energy that, you know, people always ask me, oh, is there money in this? And is there this and this? And it's like, sure, but it's almost not the real value
Yeah.
thing. And it's hard to translate that for some things, you know, but when it reduces to like time, like everyone's like, okay, you know, time's the most valuable commodity, right? And what you keep in your space, right, is like what's most influencing you, and all of those sorts of things. And it feels like people that use social media well, like it's just been a real connective thing. Like it's been like borderless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even like between celebrities, between people, where there's like this real, there's like a genuine like fortress wall around like certain people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even like if you think about somebody like Amar and Thomas and these guys that are just like, in a way, just, you know, have a stardom factor, you know what I mean? Like they basically have been like the stars of this show for years, you know, but done superbly well. And yet it's so easy to speak with them and connect with them in a way, like what you're talking about, get mentored by them.
Yeah.
And get to have that kind of opportunity is amazing. And obviously you see the wisdom of that, and because you do it, right? And you're like, oh no, this is huge. It's like an amazing thing to get to participate in. And it's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like Corona is sort of like opened, because I didn't think I would be interviewing people at all. And like the amount of people I've gotten in contact with, and I've been so surprised like how much people I've gotten in contact with, because I've watched heaps of people, like many different people that I've interviewed. I've watched them for years and stuff, and it's just weird that I get to like speak to them now. Like
Sweet.
Yeah,
it's working.
Yeah, social media is awesome. It's helped me heaps, but I feel like there's also many different ways it can be used in the wrong way.
And for sure.
Yeah.
Clearly. Clearly.
Yeah. Because I saw you just I think, you skydived into Will Smith's backyard.
I was asking my man Sean MacCormac, I was like, yo, why don't you come help me out with the jump? And I should have known something was weird when he didn't ask for an address. He asked for coordinates.
Uh-oh, there's smoke. Yeah, no, I think there's definitely supposed to be smoke. Does he know there's rocks? Has he been here, like, come here. This is really, really insane. Whoa! Hold on, somebody call Jada, hurry up. Jared, they don't know. Whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, whoa! 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 That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Did he like, how did that happen?
You know, it's pretty funny. You know, if I was gonna sum it up tightly, I would say it was through like Amar and Zach. Almost that was the most direct intersection. But I had just started working with Amar, and it was right before his balloon jump with Will. And Will was setting up at his house. It's actually, he was holding an event at his house because he was doing this whole massive Facebook project where he basically is like, I'm going to, and he basically like magnificently like took over social media for a year, you know, like he's just amazing.
Yeah.
But he was having a meeting at his house to have a number of different social media and influencers that were at that time, and to kind of just brainstorm with him and talk to him about different ideas of things that he could do kind of in this like epic 50th year kind of lap around the earth sort of thing to do, right? And so there's a number of different, you know, people that were going there and meeting his house to just discuss with him things that he could essentially do. and Amar was going to this thing, and we were like training. I was training him with something like this, and Amar just looked at me and he was like, "Will needs to talk to you." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, he doesn't know it yet, but he needs to talk to you. And I was like, whatever, like I didn't even take him seriously. And then he's like, "No, boom, set it up." So I was like, okay. So I call up and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go over to this house. And like, I'm a huge Will Smith fan. Like, who the hell isn't, right? He's amazing.
Yeah.
But I call up and I'm like, okay, hey, I was just calling to arrange this thing, get the address, whatever. I'm like, okay, yeah, it'll be at this time and this time. And then I just got like this, like McCormac, just, I don't even know what, my mouth started moving before my brain did. And I was like, yeah, hey, so where am I going to be able to park my helicopter? And she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I assume there's a spot that I can land my helicopter over there. Is there like a good spot that, where do you recommend? I can look at it on the map, but if I could get some coordinates for it, that would be great. That way I can just tell it to my pilot and have him set it up. Because I'm figuring it's Will Smith. Certainly they've got like a helicopter, how do I make an impression of this guy? Like this guy is like, they're like everything, like everybody's showing up. I'm like, I'm not gonna, like, there's no way for him. Like, I'm gonna arrive in a helicopter. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, we can set it up over here for you. And you could tell she just didn't even know what to say. She's like, yeah, of course we can set up your helicopter, like, of course. Okay. And I was like, okay, listen, just before the helicopter lands, I'll probably land on my parachute. Okay. Just letting you know. And it was like, she just didn't even notice they know to me, or I think they were just kind of stunned a little bit. And I just think they were like, okay. And I was just like, they said, yes, like, okay, great. And I called up my helicopter buddy and he's like, yeah, it's on. And he's, one of the best heli pilots in the world. He's my Red Bull teammate. He does all like the acrobatic flying. So it was like him getting into this spot was like nothing. And then I essentially did what's called like a sight unseen. It was like, I'd never been to the property and I'd never seen it. And so what I had done was, through Google Earth and, Apple Maps, I was like measuring it out and like trying to scope it out and figure out what I could do. And then a day out, went for it and ended up kind of having a great little fun run going in there. And, it was really funny because I ended up kind of swooping like for skydivers, and swooping is what we call when you fly a parachute, like low to the ground and do like this thing. And it's like, as a swooper, if you see water there and you don't kind of touch it, it's like it'll be like a thorn in your side, right? You'll never forget it or forgive yourself. So it was like I saw this thing and I just kind of like came through the trees and was able to like skim across the water and then hop over the grass and then landed like with like my canopy like went poop and there was like a tree right there. Like there was no, I was at like, it was like, there was nowhere else for me to go. It stopped really perfect, but my canopy stopped and there was a guy under the tree that was filming me doing the whole thing. That guy and I became really good friends randomly. Like he was like, we felt really like connected. He was like, you came to me. And I was like, yeah, dude. But he came out and like he's learned to skydive. He's done a couple tandems and he's just like an amazing guy. So we kind of became friends randomly. But even like Will was so just like thrilled and excited and like, what, and just the idea that the impact that I was able to have in that moment on someone that, like I hold in such a high regard, you know what I mean, was like amazing. It was just an amazing, cool moment. It's like, meeting like one of the biggest stars of your life and like going, oh my God, you're amazing. That was crazy. Oh, whoa, ho, ho, ho. Like his whole thing. Like, and he's just like, we spent the afternoon with him, talked to him about a bunch of ideas. And he was really, one of the most charismatic people I've ever met. And I remember like leaving, I had like a bunch of like really like crazy moments. I was just like standing there at one point, we're like in his house, we were like walking around doing stuff. And I kind of like felt this like presence and I kind of look over and he was kind of like standing like over me. I'm pretty short and he's like this like giant of a man, like, and he's just standing there with like his arms folded looking at me. And I just kind of like smiled. He's like, I appreciate you. And I was just like, oh, like, yes, but he was just like this I remember leaving that place, you know, like watching him with his family and just his presence. It was like I left there going, oh my God, I got to do better. Yeah, I really, and it was so funny. It was like, I remember it was like so distinct. Like the whole time it was like, when I remember leaving there, I wasn't like I wasn't even like thinking of the jump or like any of these other things or like, which were crazy. Like this, that sight unseen and like that whole swoop was so technically crazy and tight and perfect. And it was like really meaningless, you know, and there's been a couple of people, you know, that are like sage-like people where just their presence, you're like, ooh, I need to bring it up. I need to bring it up, you know? And he really impacted me in that way where you're just like, I need to do better.
Yeah.
In whatever that is. I need to speak better. I need to be a better dad. I need to be smarter. I need to figure it out. But he was just like a real genuine, charismatic. When you hear people go like, oh, star power, and it seems so cheesy or like this thing. And he was like, you know, I meet a lot of people that feel just like very ordinary people or something like that. But then like you'll meet some of these people where it's like, if it wasn't acting or something else, you know, like their vibration is just so high. Like it's just like you just feel it. Like it was like, holy crap. All right. Whew. I'll work on my posture or something. Jesus Christ. Okay, pull it together, man. But so yeah.
Do you still talk to him now? Or
I don't talk to him that,
like,
you know, that much. Like I had like that wonderful afternoon. They are like an amazingly cool family, and they are traveling the world pretty much constantly, as they basically go for world dominance of awesome. You know, like bringing water to people and making like reusable and replenishable things. It's like they're on a mega mission. But you know, they were super kind. Like they had Willow and her friends came out and did like a tandem, and you know, they're generous, amazing. They're just, you know, they're wonderful, super cool people. To be honest, I feel kind of blessed that I garnered any attention from their schedule. I got 3 kids and like, you know, a crazy thing that I juggle, and the amount of attention or time that I have for things is pretty limited. So it's pretty finite, and that's my world. I'm sure their world, it's way bigger.
That's awesome. Is that like a highlight of your, I don't know what I'm saying, like career or life, like meeting their family?
They're amazing people, and I feel really blessed for any of those interactions. And I'm really an artist at heart. So for me, anytime I connect with like a real artistic natured person, and I get inspired. If it's someone that inspires me, like as an artist, to me, that's the gold, right? That's the invisible commodity that is like unobtainium, some Wakanda business, you know, that like unobtainium, you know what I mean? And so like in those senses, I really, really get it, you know, like, but if I think about just career, like I feel like a dork, like I've had so many just like miracle lightning moments. But like I'm like a dork. Like my wife is like such a brutal, like tough, wild woman. Like she's given birth to like all of our children at home. And it's like, you know, being able to get your kid out and be the first thing that it sees and all of these things is such a mind-bending experience that it dwarfs my adventure stuff in a lot of ways. And it's so simple. But I wouldn't have gotten that if she wasn't the badass, you know what I mean? That she is, like, you know what I mean? Like I've been like in the lobby of the hospital, like, is she done yet? You know, or whatever. It's like an amazing gift. But meetings, well, I've met a lot of really amazing people that to me it has been a real blessing, because each of those more than like I feel like meeting those people like that, and there's been a lot of them, like people that you won't even know their names, but like they resonate at that level, right? And so like for me to go like, oh, you know, uh-oh, hello, hang on.
So good.
There we go. I like, for me, like there's been some people that I know that like you totally won't know their name, but like if I said them, it would be like, oh, like this person, like they're in this zone, right? And like all of those people, what they do is like they open up your consciousness. You know what I mean? They open up, oh no, this is possible. Oh no, this is possible. Even if you're like a wild daydreamer that thinks that there is no ceiling, right? Like, and then you which is me, right? Like I'm like daydream for a living, you know. By the time I have a life flying a board around above your head, you never know. Right? It's like anything's possible. And to me, like each of those people, just even for those moments, what they really did was like open my peripheral, you know. Like it wasn't like, oh, this star shook my hand or something. It's like I've met lots of famous people, and you're like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, enjoy your day, you know. Enjoy my day, and my wife's either happy or angry. Let me go deal with that, you know. Like, it's not relevant. But like when you meet people, and it could be anyone, you know. Like I've had a janitor open my mind. You know what I mean? Like you never know. Like life is such a crazy journey. Like if you're only looking at the measure of a man by like strictly a wallet or something, you're gonna miss wisdom. You know, like pearls all day long. And like I'm always seeking that vibration of people that just make me go, oh, thanks. I wasn't quite as smart as I thought I was. You know what I mean? And like, so like some of those people, like I've met some people like Tony De Niro, vibranium, you know what I mean? If you ever get the chance to see like Robert Downey Jr. in his presence, he's someone that is like a high vibration. Like you'll see these people like I haven't met him, but like a Matthew McConaughey, or like brilliant people. There's brilliant people all over, you know. Like, and if you can, that always triggers me, or is a life thing. But so much of what I've done has been more like life engaging. Like if I fail, I will not live. Some of those pinnacle moments are really more cherished or trophied in my mind, maybe than meeting certain people, right? Though, I say that though I'm someone that I would be nothing if it were not for my like the mentors and like these it's not even fair. Like I would not even call it's a plane going overhead. I jumped from that plane like a couple thousand times. I like know the engine. That's really funny. Sorry. But the like if it was not for my mentors and just like the universe just like grabbing my face and sticking it like into what I needed to do, you know, like it would have been crazy. I was like a crazy mixture of things that was only meant to do this. Like on the ground, it's like a madness, you know, like it's a rarefied space. But so I feel super blessed for those interactions. It really is a gold thing. And like my sponsors and like those people like Diedrich and Red Bull and, you know, that thing, they're not, he's like, he's something else.
Yeah.
He's something else. He's a pioneer of something else. Like what he does and like what those people do. It's not like, oh yeah, let's sponsor. You know, it's like, no, you know, like he's making magic and he's like an artist too, you know. He's just like, instead of collecting like horses, and which I'm sure he's got an amazing horse collection, but like you know, cars, horses, bikes, and human mutants. You know what I mean? If you like stand out as like some sort of weird Play-Doh of like a crazy mutant new thing, and it's aviation. He's like, wow, okay. He likes stuff that flies, right? So, so it gives you wings, like
Yeah.
quite literally. It's like it's amazing, for sure.
You're awesome. Like, yeah. I don't,